Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sir, I'll start now.
Yeah, I think you start.
Yes. He is the case of a 74 years old male from Bangalore. He is a retired government officer and he's right-handed person. And history started in September 2020. Patient was apparently all right. Had history of lower back pain since 1 month, which was dull aching, aggravates while bending and prolonged standing, and radiating to both thighs and relieves on lying down position. And
Okay,
there
wait,
were
wait. Now, how do you analyze this part of the story? Now, the
as a
patient has
patient
come to
came
you. Yeah, tell me.
as a patient has come with lower back pain, sir.
Hmm.
So I will see whether that pain because of musculoskeletal or neurological, like radicular pain, radiculopathy or arthropathy. Uh, Based on that, I'll follow up further, sir.
No, no, but from this point in the story part, what is
Yes,
your
sir.
impression?
So patient had lower back pain.
So, what do you think
Which
is the common cause in this patient at this age with this story? See, remember, there is a low back pain, dull aching, aggravates while bending and prolonged standing, radiating to both thighs, and relieved on lying position. Each one
Yes, sir.
is so important to analyze.
Yes, sir.
So, what do you
Sir,
think
use
with this story? What do you think is the probable cause?
lumbar spondylosis. We'll see. I'll think.
Okay, lumbar
This,
spondylosis can be one part of it. Now,
yes,
what
sir.
is most important to differentiate a benign backache, which I will talk to you of in my second half, from
Okay.
something which is requires investigation, is that the pain is relieved by lying down. That is a very, very
Mm.
important point in the history. Any pathological problem, the pain will continue even by lying down. So
Okay,
it
sir.
is important to note that particular history, that the pain
Mm.
is dull aching,
Okay.
aggravates while bending or prolonged standing. That means it is something related to the movement of the vertebra. So when a
Yes, sir.
person is bending, there is a movement of the vertebra which is causing the pain.
Mm.
Standing because of the pressure on the vertebra, and radiating to both thighs is the question now. Relieved on lying down position. So if a patient
Mm.
comes to me with this history, I know that it is a benign backache and examination does not show any neurological deficit. We just
Mm.
give him some analgesics.
Analytics.
So, two, 3 points. One is the pain aggravated by spinal movements. Okay. Second
Yes, sir.
point is pain relieved by rest. So, it is a benign condition. So, maybe lumbar spondylosis, as you rightly said, but this radiation to the thighs, whether it is a arthropathy radiation or whether it is a radiculopathy radiation, that you will have to tell me. How do you
Mm.
differentiate?
Sir, radiculopathy, whenever patient coughs, sneezes during that time, pain will, there is sharp shooting pain will be there along the dermatome. I mean, arthropathy, it's not like that.
So many people confuse when they say that there is a backache and also pain in the legs. They immediately conclude that it is a radiculopathy. Remember, there is a difference between referred pain and a radicular pain. A referred pain of the lumbar spondylotic arthropathy, the joints in the lumbar between the lumbar vertebra, can also give a referred pain to the lower limbs. The differentiation, as you said, is radiculopathy is the pain in the distribution of root. Radiculopathy, the pain is in the distribution of the root. Whereas in arthropathy, it is a vague pain. They will say that it is in the front of the thigh, back of the thigh, leg, and all that. The second point which you have missed is that radiculopathy worsens, the pain worsens on sneezing and coughing, which increases the CSF pressure. Because of the holding of the breath, there is an increased intrathoracic pressure, and As a reflection, there is a CSF pressure. So on the root, the pressure becomes more, and the patient will have pain in the distribution of the root aggravated by coughing and sneezing. Whereas this arthropathy is aggravated by bending forwards or standing for a prolonged period. Now, why this is important, whether I should do an MR scan of the spine or not, depends on whether it is a radiculopathy or a arthropathy. I know everybody nowadays, the moment you say backache, they will ask for MR lumbar spine. I have no issue on that. But the problem is follow up of that. Most people will have L4-5 disc prolapse or L5-S1 disc prolapse, and immediately they are referred for surgery, which is not required unless there is a radiculopathy with some neurological deficit. So this part is a day-to-day OPD problem from MBBS to the MD and to the neurology, neurosurgery. Everywhere you'll see patients coming to us for backache. So please remember how to analyze the story of backache. As you rightly said, you have to differentiate between arthropathy and radiculopathy. Why we should differentiate, whether we should do a scan or not, depends on whether it is a radiculopathy or arthropathy. Okay, good.
Okay.
But tell me the commonest cause of backache. I mean, you see backache, 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 60-year-old, 50-year-old, so common in the OPD. Do you see or not in the OPD?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what is the commonest cause?
Lumbar
Here because
spondylosis.
pardon?
Lumbar spondylosis is most common.
20 years lumbar spondylosis.
No. Sir, it's like postural, sir. A patient posture because of that. Postural, sir. Postural.
Postural backache. And commonest cause of backache in the community is a postural backache, not spondylosis. Spondylosis only after 40, 50 aging. But you see so many common young people coming with backache. That is because of bad posture. Yeah, we'll talk about it a little later. Okay, next.
Sir, patient had history of fatigability since 1 month and loss of appetite since 1 month.
Yeah. So
And
now with these two things, fatigability, loss of appetite, and elderly man, low backache, just 1 month duration, does it sound something ominous significance?
yes.
Would you like to dismiss this symptom or you want to?
Sir, I want to continue this.
If you want to consider it to the backache, what is your thought process? What do you think?
Sir, could be some infectious or 70 years elderly man malignancies are also common.
Exactly.
So I'll consider these things.
So exactly. So fatigability, loss of appetite, when people come to us, we always think of underlying malignancy as the cause. You said infection, but there is no history of fever anytime, no?
So the
No history of
low
fever.
grade temperatures and all, they won't know.
So there's no history of fever. So
Also.
the first part of the story, we thought it is spondylosis. The second part of the story, fatigability, loss of appetite, elderly man. So I'm a little concerned whether he has got an underlying malignancy elsewhere with a lesion in the bone. So with that story, it may be worthwhile doing an MR spine in this patient. Okay, patient was evaluated, right?
Yes, sir. On OPD basis, for fatigue and loss of appetite, there was nothing contributory. So patient was put on multivitamins and analgesics for back pain and sent home, sir.
No scan. MR
No
scan.
scan was done, sir. No scan was done, sir.
Something unusual because most people with an postural backache get a MR scan, not 1, 2, 3 of them. Okay, so I think he was evaluated basically for fatigability and loss of appetite.
Yes,
And I hope they have done a chest X-ray, abdominal ultrasound, and the
everything was normal.
hematological workup. Everything was normal. Diabetes.
Yes, sir. No, sir. He's not diabetic. He is hypertensive, sir. And He is a psychotic patient. I mean, he is schizophrenic patient, so he is on antipsychotic drugs also.
Oh, acha, she was an antipsychotic drugs also.
Mm.
Okay, so from the first slide, the story, it looks that patient has new onset. Is very important. New onset backache of 1 month duration, radiating down. So we'll see whether it is a arthropathy or radiculopathy. Fatigability, loss of appetite, a little bit concern whether it is underlying malignancy or not. Incidentally, also under treatment for schizophrenia. Okay. For how many years is on treatment?
Sir, he for 5 years, sir.
5 years. Okay, right. Next slide.
Sir, after that, in October 2020, on October 23rd, that is on 53rd day of symptoms, patient presented to ER with history of severe low back pain on lying down position in the afternoon.
No, wait.
And
So from 0 to 53rd day, what was happening?
sir, he had back pain and fatigability and loss of appetite. So after
what,
1 month,
what
he
is the
was
progress
evaluated.
in the intervening 53 days? Was he continuously doing all his activities or did he have some
Yes,
problem?
sir. Yes,
Or is
sir.
it a
Yes, sir.
sudden emergency severe back pain? Or is the
Yes, sir.
back pain progressively worsening?
No, sir. They said on 23rd he had severe back pain, sir.
So in the intervening period, he was stable.
I mean, he had back pain on and off, sir. Like they said he was okay with back pain. Also, he was doing all his activities and all. But on 23rd, he had severe back pain on even on lying down position also, sir.
Because you remember, they attend emergency room only when the problem comes up to this. So they will all come and say, today only he has got severe back pain. You will have to sit and clarify how was the pain 1 month ago, how was the pain 2 months ago. So then is the pain same as last time when you saw in the OPD, or week to week, or the pain increasing? So unless you ask them, they won't say. They will just say, no. Suddenly today only it has happened. So this sudden business is something which you need to analyze properly. Anyway, on that day he came with severe low back pain. What is the most significant part of this particular story is back pain on lying down position also. You understand? In the previous slide we were saying that benign back pains get relieved by rest, lying down. But here is a patient who has a severe low back pain on lying down position also. Now that should give you an alarm bell that there is some pathological going on. Understand?
Yes, sir.
So that particular
And
piece, the pain becoming worse or pain is persisting during lying down position is a very important point. Okay.
and he was evaluated in ER and found to had a severe tenderness over lumbar spine region, and there were no neuro deficits at that time. At that time of presentation, because of severe pain, MRI LS spine was done, and
Wait.
uh,
Go back. Severe tenderness over lumbar spine. Was there any gibbous?
no sir, no gibbous sir.
There's no gibbous. Okay. So this time because of the severe pain as well as pain on lying down position, that has warranted to do a MR lumbar spine. So what did you find? Show me MR lumbar spine.
Sir, L2, L3 disc shows severe reduction in the height, and adjacent end plates are irregular, and severe bone edema with contrast enhancement was there, sir. And these features are suggestive of severe degenerative changes with bone edema, could be infective abnormalities.
Okay. So there is some pathology there. This is not a usual lumbar spondylosis picture. And as you can see that the white part of it is a edema part. So bone itself is affected, and also there is a collapse of the vertebra, especially what is the vertebra 5432 L2. L2 vertebra is collapsed like this, and L3 is slightly reduced in the height, But the only thing, as I can see here, there is no pathology in the spinal canal. So whenever there is a picture like this, we look for any pathology in the spinal canal, like a secondary deposit or an abscess, pyogenic or tubercular. So in this case, with this imaging what you are showing, there is no evidence of any lesion within the spinal canal. So once there is a lesion in the spinal canal, it requires a exploration, surgical exploration. So here there is a differential diagnosis, whether it is simply a severe degenerative process or is it an infection. Okay, then what happened? What was done to him?
Sir, on 21st October, CT guided core biopsy, including intervertebral disc and subchondral bone, was done, and infective workup was done, and TBPC was done, and everything was normal. And on histopathology, it showed degenerative tissue with no inflammatory cells and no granuloma. Sir.
Okay, so why do you think the biopsy was done?
Sir, features suggestive of infection. So they want to rule out infection or infiltrations also could be there. So they want to rule out that thing. So they have done this workup.
Yeah, first thing is it is not the usual lumbar spondylosis picture. So with the amount of bone edema which is there in the vertebral body and the amount of destruction which it shows that there is some pathological problem there. Though the differential diagnosis between severe degeneration versus infection requires to be treated promptly, otherwise they will land up with paralysis because the abscess will get into the spinal canal. Right now, there is no lesion within the spinal canal, but suppose it is an infection or even a secondary deposit, then you will find that the patient may come back with paralysis because the infection, the abscess spreads into the cauda equina there. So there is definitely a need for exploration and a biopsy. But here in this case, instead of exploration, they just did a CT guided biopsy. So under the CT scan, they push the needle and you can see under the CT scan where exactly the lumbar vertebra pathology. So that particular part is aspirated and sent for complete workup, histopathology to see malignant cells and infection, pyogenic and tuberculosis. So all that infective workup was normal. So what does this mean? Are you happy with the report of the pathologist? Because we are
No, sir.
suspecting something is going on there radiologically. What could be the problem? Remember, any biopsy, whether it is a biopsy of the breast or biopsy of the brain or biopsy of the lymph node, the pathologist sees what you have given to him. The pathologist is looking at the sample that is provided to him. That means the responsibility or the onus is on the surgeon to pick the right area of pathology. To pick the right area of pathology. But if the pathology is in this area and the biopsy is just in the surrounding area, so you will get a report that everything is normal. And then what people will do, they will go to the another pathologist and he will do some more cutting of that block. And then he will take up and then say this is malignancy. Then they'll blame this pathologist and they will say that pathologist. If you want an opinion of another pathologist, the same slide which has been made should be given to another pathologist, not the block, not the tissue block, because you may cut the tissue another 2-3 millimeters, you may get the diagnosis of either pyogenic or tubercular or malignancy. So know the limitations of biopsy. In spite of the surgeon's best effort to know where the pathology is under the CT scan, one may still miss the real pathological area. So when we see this thing, we don't conclude that, okay, I have excluded this, I have excluded that, and all that. We should say, okay, I have to keep it in mind what is happening. Let me follow up the patient because I might have missed the real biopsy site, even though I am guided by the CT scan. So please remember, these are all general principles. Tomorrow you do a lymph node biopsy, you might have picked up a wrong lymph node or relatively healthy lymph node, leaving the real diseased lymph node. And so you may conclude that it is normal. So what does it mean? Back to clinical medicine. Your suspicion, your way of looking at it is more important. All investigations are ancillary. They don't give you a final diagnosis. Pathologist is a final diagnosis provided you give the proper tissue. That is very important. When you remove an organ, then of course the pathologist will cut several areas and try to find out. Okay, next. So patient was discharged because he had no deficit and only symptomatic therapy was given. Okay, right.
After that, on November 2020, on November 18th, that is on 76th day of symptoms, in the morning, patient found difficulty in getting up from the bed. He called for help, and with the help of his son, he got up. And after that, he had difficulty for walking. Later, next day, patient noticed slippage of slipper from left foot. And then patient preferred to stay on the bed, and he would just go to the bathroom, which was 3 feet away, with the help of attendant.
So what happened now?
Sir, weakness started, sir. Proximal muscle weakness followed by distal muscle weakness.
So he developed motor weakness in both lower limbs. That means now he has got a paraparesis.
Paraparesis, sir.
So we were waiting for the neurological deficit to come. So now the patient says, look here, I have a neurological deficit. At least now you make a proper diagnosis. You understand? I keep telling in my class, the evolution of a disease is like watching a striptease show. So the later you come, the more easy is the diagnosis. So he came to us for back pain, which we said spondylosis. Then he came for severe back pain. Some investigation was done. We didn't get a proper diagnosis. We thought it is still degenerative. Okay, he doesn't have a neuro deficit, so there's no need to explore. They just did a CT guided biopsy. You did not explore. And now the disease says, look here, I have advanced now, at least now you make a diagnosis, isn't it? Now, with that scan, you said severe degeneration or infection, or maybe carcinomatous or lymphoma deposits. Now, between the three, we have now ruled out the degeneration, because now he has come with a neurological deficit, which comes only when there is a disc prolapse. So if it is a disc prolapse, they can come again with the paraparesis. In the infection, pyogenic or tubercular? What do you think now? Suppose it is an infection. Do you go for pyogenic or tubercular?
Sir, I'll go for tubercular because pyogenic fever will be there, sir. In tubercular also fever will be there, but that is low grade. So patient won't aware of that fever.
So a pyogenic will not wait for 76th day to develop a neurological deficit, because pyogenic is a fast progressing. So if at all it is infective, it is certainly not pyogenic, because between the back pain and the neurological deficit, a good 2.5 months has gone. So no pyogenic infection will go for 2.5 months. So if it is infection, it will be tuberculosis. Okay, so he developed a motor weakness rapidly, both proximal and lower. So now what has he got now? Paraparesis due to what?
Sir, paraparesis due to radiculopathy, sir.
Cauda equina lesion. So you must say that it is a cauda equina lesion. Because radiculopathy, as I told you earlier, is the term is used for medical condition like GB syndrome or diabetic radiculopathy, like that. But when we are looking for a compressive pathology at the level of L2-3, there is no spinal cord. If he has developed a paraplegia with a pathology of L2-3, that means we are dealing with a cauda equina syndrome at a higher level, L2-3. Cauda equina also can be higher level, L2-3, or lower level, L5-S1. So there is a need to localize even in Cauda equina disease. Okay. Next.
And on 83rd day, patient had irrelevant talk. On 84th day morning, while on bed, patient noticed weakness of both lower limbs. Patient was not able to move his lower limbs on the bed. And the attendant of the patient brought him to the hospital on the same day.
But he developed weakness on 73rd day.
73rd day, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. 76th day.
76 days. So 1 week he was at home only.
Yes, sir.
6 days he was at home only. So only when he developed a total paralysis, he was brought to the hospital.
Hospital, yes, sir.
Okay, so whatever is the underlying pathology, it progressed. It is not an acute, like a disc prolapse. It is not an acute one. It is a slowly progressive, subacute, or say, let us say, progressive over a period of 7 days. I usually like the term in terms of duration rather than putting acute, subacute, chronic like that. So the evolution of the disease over a period of 6 to 7 days, the neurological problem. So whatever is the pathology has extended. Okay, next.
Sir, according to the attendant history, there was no history of bowel and bladder disturbances, and no history of trauma to the lower back, and no history of headache, vomiting, and seizures, and no history of fever. And there was history of loss of appetite is there. And past history, as I already told, history of hypertension is there. He's on ARBs and thiazides, and he's on antipsychotic drugs. Others, nothing contributory. And now coming to examination, uh, patient is conscious but not oriented to time, place, person, and vitals are stable. And there was diffuse tenderness over lower lumbar region, but there was no gibbous and no neurocutaneous markers.
Okay.
And higher mental functions.
Yes.
And coming to higher mental functions, because patient so altered sensorium and cranial examination was normal, and motor system examination, upper limb was normal. Coming to lower limb, there was no wasting, and tone, there was hypotonia in both hip flexors and knee extensors and ankle also.
So hypotonia in both lower limbs. Now you are talking about not oriented to time, place, person. So what is that due to? He has got a problem lower down, and now you are talking about the other end of the nervous systems.
Sir, a patient was on thiazides also, sir, and so he had hyponatremia because of patient is already on antipsychotic drugs, and because of this weakness and all, he discontinued the drugs. And top of that, he had hyponatremia. Because of that, he was little altered.
So what was your diagnosis of the higher function? Is it a psychosis or is it a encephalopathy? That is a fundamental. Then question encephalopathy due to what? Suppose the patient has a tuberculous infection in the L2-3 which we are discussing. Has it developed now tuberculous meningoencephalitis? It's a very important question. So the fundamental question is it a continuation of psychosis or is it a encephalopathy? And then you start seeing whether encephalopathy and electrolyte hypoglycemia, hyponatremia, etc. How do you distinguish in this patient whether it is a encephalopathy which is organic from a psychosis which is a non-organic? You might have routinely done electrolyte, blood sugar, LFT, and then found out there is a hyponatremia. But clinically, how do you distinguish?
Clinical.
Don't say MR brain and all.
No. Don't know, sir.
Because the patient already had psychosis, they will have only hallucinations, auditory hallucination, visual hallucinations. But their basic, that is the memory, dressing up may be bad, but they are never incontinent. A very important point between organic and non-organic encephalopathy is in organic brain syndromes, the patient may be incontinent and they may run around without knowing that they are passing urine, and they also may have seizures, neurological deficit, headache, and all that. But here, if the patient has psychosis, the same symptoms are continuing, then you can say it is a functional disorder. But the attendants say that this is something different from what he used to have for the last 5 years, then it is certainly there. Of course, we'll have to check for MMSC. MMSC will be normal if he is a cooperative patient. If he is a cooperative patient, MMSC will be normal. But if he is uncooperative, you may not be able to really do the test. Okay. But it is important in this patient because is it encephalopathy related to the lumbar, in which case it could be tuberculous encephalopathy. Okay, next. So as expected from the history, he should have lower motor neuron, that is the cauda equina paraplegia. So he has hypotonia. Next.
Upper limb power was normal. Coming to lower limb, compared to right side, compared to left side, right side there was power of 1/5 was there, and left side 0/5 on hip region. Come to knee, left 1/5 and knee 2/5, and toes 1/5, and there is more weakness on left side compared to right side.
Okay, so there is some amount of asymmetry between the left and right, which will help us to make a proper diagnosis. Okay, but overall he has a. Okay, let us see. Next.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he's unable to move both the lower limbs even in the while lying down on the bed. That's what you are trying to show us. Okay.
And coordination could not be tested in the lower limbs
I
because
understand.
of weakness. And there was no involuntary movements and reflexes. Coming deep tendon reflexes, upper limbs, biceps, triceps, everything normal. Lower limb, knee and ankle jacks are absent. Plantar, for me, mutes are both sides.
This is common. All post-OIR students, not only they are mute in the classroom, even the plantar is also mute, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
And the sensory system examination, in lower limbs, it was inconsistent because patient is not properly telling. Sir, when I went there, he was so aggressive and he didn't cooperate that much. So sensory system examination was not proper. In the spine and cranial gait could not be tested because of weakness, and other system examinations were normal. And coming to diagnosis. So, diagnosis.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, lower motor neuron, asymmetric lower limb weakness, left more than right, and proximal more than distal, and anatomical localization, lumbosacral root, and pathological cauda equina syndrome. Etiological, we have to see, sir. Could be infectious or infiltrations.
Pathological is not cauda equina syndrome. Anatomical localization is cauda equina syndrome. It is not pathological diagnosis. Okay, so neurological deficit is a lower motor neuron paraparesis. So once you say lower motor neuron, it is either anterior horn, anterior root, or a plexus. Now, is it a, you have not mentioned it is a motor and sensory deficit. You have just mentioned only motor. What about sensory and bladder? Remember, all paraplegias, there are three components: sensory, motor, and bladder. So in your diagnosis, go to the diagnosis, neurological deficit. You have not mentioned sensory loss.
Sir, sensory, it was inconsistent, sir. There was sensory loss, but the patient, because of altered sensorium, I couldn't elicit, sir.
No, that it is okay. It is very important for us to know whether it is a pure motor element in which case the compressive pathology is ruled out because compression cannot press only the anterior roots. You understand?
Okay, sir.
Compression
Okay.
cannot press the cauda equina, only the motor component.
Okay.
Only it happens in GB syndrome, diabetic radiculopathy, like that, where there is a demyelination of the motor roots. Now we are now talking about lower motor neuron paraplegia. So sensory, motor, and bladder. What about bladder?
Sir, patient was catheterized, sir,
So,
the
so
time.
it is very difficult to know the bladder when a person is bedridden with paraplegia. All we have to ask is whether he has a sensation to pass. That is before the catheter is done. Of course, the moment the patient is in, they will put a catheter, so you will not be able to make out. But if there is some evidence of sensory, you must be able to see this. You see, when you prick here, the response to the patient, and when you prick on the thigh, will be different. That is how you should be able to assess the sensory even in a semi-conscious patient. So you cannot say that I can't make out sensory. Sensory level you may not make out, but sensory yes or sensory no. Qualitative, quantitative may not be possible, 70%, 50% like that. So you will have to prick here, and the same thing you prick here and see there will be a difference. So here it is a case of sensory motor, LMN paraplegia, good. Bladder question mark. Now anatomical localization is cauda equina roots. Cauda equina means roots only. We are talking about cauda equina because cauda equina syndrome is a compressive pathology, whereas a radiculopathy is a medical disorder. You understand the difference?
Yes, sir.
So in anatomical, like in spinal cord, where is it? C5, D1, D6. Similarly, even in cauda equina, the cauda equina starts at L1. That is, the conus ends the spinal cord and the cauda equina starts. So what is the level? Is it L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, S1? In this patient, what is the level of cauda equina lesion? You have
Sir,
just
it
said
is there.
L2 to S1. Yes. So what is the anatomical level?
Sir, previously had disc edema at L2 to
No, no,
L3.
no. Clinical. Clinically, where is the level?
Sir, L2 to L3, sir, because ankle reflex and knee reflex both were absent. I
Very
mean,
good. So it is extremely important for localization in the cauda equina. I'll tell you why. The patient like this comes and the MR scan shows a clean spine with a L5S1 disc prolapse. You understand what I'm saying?
sir.
He comes with L5S1 disc prolapse. Otherwise, the lumbar spine is clean, not like in this patient. Now, immediately he is referred for. This is what is happening in OPD. That's what I'm telling the quotations. They sent for L5S1 disc prolapse surgery. But actually, the diagnosis is a GB syndrome. So, patients with GB syndrome with paraplegia, when the even a homeopathic, Ayurvedic, everybody asks for MR spine, and the report comes as L5S1 disc prolapse, and immediately they are sent for surgery. If it is an orthopedic surgeon, they may not even clearly look for sensory this and all that. So if you are a doctor, if the patient is given to you with LMN paraplegia and MR scan shows L5S1, you will say that this MR L5S1 has nothing to do with paraplegia in this patient because the hip flexors, which is L12, and the glutei, which is L5S1, are affected, and quadriceps is L23. So the L1, L2, L3 is affected clinically. The disc is lower level at L4-5. I hope you are getting the point what I'm saying, because we see this in OPD, this mishaps happening. So don't go by the diagnosis by any investigation. GB syndromes are operated as disc prolapse without a clinical diagnosis. Why? Clinically, if you find the patient has hip flexors and knee extensors, L1, 2, 3, 4 is affected. The disc prolapse at a lower level has nothing to do with L1, 2, 3. So please remember, clinical diagnosis is very, very, very important. So here, pathological can be with a normal vertebra like spinal meningitis, tuberculous spinal meningitis is a possibility. But as we already know, there is a vertebral pathology. There is something which has gone into the spinal canal, obviously now. So we are back to the same diagnosis, whether it is a infective, because it is a long duration, tuberculosis is still the number one diagnosis. So pathological is a infective or a compressive. Etiological is query tuberculosis, query secondary deposits. Okay, good. Next, what happened?
Sir, this was the MRI spine done next time, sir.
Repeat MRI spine done. What did it show?
Sir, same, sir.
Was
Disc
there any
edema.
change from the earlier one or same?
Same, sir. I mean, the edema progressed, sir. Compared to previous one, edema was more here.
So why do you say same? There is a definite
sir,
worsening.
Yes, sir.
Definite
Edema.
worsening, and maybe something is into the spinal canal, which I am not able to make out here. So that is another one, spinal canal possibility. Okay, then what happened next?
Then,
so what should you do now? Obviously, you have to explore the patient, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You need to explore the patient because now there is a neurological deficit. So why there is a neurological deficit? There's something is happening there. So last time was only biopsy. Now we have to explore and look at the roots. What is happening to the root? So what was done?
Sir, exploration surgery was done, and the patient was operated.
What was the operative finding? And
sir, is there, sir? L2 to L3 disc space pathologies, pathological and extremely soft, and no frank pus or granulation tissue. Severe compression over L2 to L5 level, and thecal sac was severely compressed and was not pulsating in beginning, but after microsurgical decompression, it start pulsating, and no intra of nerve injury or CSF leak, sir.
so what was the operative diagnosis and what is the histopathology diagnosis?
Sir, operative diagnosis, degenerative changes. So
the surgeon did not find any definitive
no
pathology.
necrosis. No, sir, no necrosis, nothing, sir.
So no definitive pathology.
No, sir.
Okay, now what about the histopathology now? Whatever
histopathology also, sir, no inflammatory cells, no granuloma, and chronic degenerative changes were there, sir.
So even histopathology has no answer.
Yes, sir.
CSF was done?
Not done, sir.
CSF was not done. So what is the management now in this patient?
Sir, he was after surgery. This is the power, sir. Patient improved.
Good. So the operative finding was the roots were wrapped because of some degenerative changes. He did a decompression. No, you said something.
No, sir. L2 to L5 laminectomy was done, sir, and microdiscectomy after the decompression, sir, and L1 L5 fusion with some titanium pedicle screws and rods.
So basically, it is a lumbar canal stenosis. What you are saying? The cauda equina was compressed.
This is right.
Because the surgeon told me that cauda equina was compressed because of the narrow canal with a disc prolapse. So the decompression has helped him to recover the motor power. So this is one of the rare varieties of a severe decompression causing the cauda equina syndrome due to a combination of narrow canal and a disc prolapse both. But remember, the level of disc prolapse is at L1, 2, level of cauda equina. So it must be a very narrow canal and hypertrophy of the ligamentum flavum. So the soft tissue and the hard tissue all together has made a compression. And somewhere on the operative finding, you said that after removal, then it started pulsating. That means now the life has come back to the cauda equina. So the final diagnosis is a lumbar canal stenosis due to soft tissue, that is hypertrophy of the ligamentum flavum, disc prolapse, canal stenosis. All this is causing the cauda equina syndrome. Uh, Operative finding and histopathology after the operation. Any other slide?
No, sir.